Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Welcome to Well-Tempered Bernadette, a piano's tale of 5 cities. I'm your host, Valerie Dueck. I'm a classical pianist who has moved all around the globe with my trusty piano, Bernadette. The theme of this series is movement. We are talking about what it's like moving to new cities, how to navigate culture shock, and why building communities around us is so important, especially in the field of music. In our last episode, we were talking about home and about making a home away from home, especially when we travel so much for work. This episode is on Oslo, and we're talking about the idea of support, about looking to these other institutions and communities to help us feel welcomed and a sense of home through finding our support that way. So for me, the longest stretch that I've lived in any city has been 5 years, and that was in Ottawa. Bernadette and I have called Ottawa home on several occasions, and each time that I go back, each time I return, I feel like I know to go back to my community of friends who has become like family to me. And I'm also supported by the institutions that sustained me since the first time I moved to that city, which are the universities, my church, various arts organizations, and music festivals. Returning to Ottawa on multiple occasions has taught me that it is so critical to quickly make a community as soon as you arrive. Oslo is a city that I've lived in for the shortest amount of time. Bernadette and I were there for only 4.5 months, but yet it was a place that felt like home really quickly for me, really early on. Maybe it was because I knew that I would be there for such a short period of time, but it lit a fire under me to get out there and start making friends after the first week or two of arriving in the city. And I instantly felt welcomed and supported by a group of friends that still sustains me to this day. I wasn't the only one who was going to need some additional support systems when I moved to Oslo. It turned out that Bernadette was going to need some support of her own. So after her icy and treacherous arrival into the port of Norway, where she had to wait a while until the spring thaw, she arrived in our home and we discovered that she had a chipped key and her pedal board was permanently broken. So since then, we've been trying various makeshift ways of keeping that pedal board attached. After all, without a pedal board and considering her constant need for tuning, she would be a little too close to a harpsichord for my taste. So these days, she's getting her support from a hymnal and a bunch of Canadian living magazines. Our guests today are no strangers to the idea of support. They've been doing it for each other for nearly 4 decades in all of their moves. They have recently lived in Bergen, Norway, and on 2 separate occasions actually, as well as Winnipeg and Ottawa for 2 long-term stays. So lots of places that are quite familiar to me. Paule Préfontaine and David Stewart are violinists who have just recently moved back to Canada, and they are joining us today from Sauk in British Columbia. Paule and David, welcome here. Bernadette and I are so excited to have you here today.
Hello, good morning. It's still morning here.
It's morning for you and evening here for us. So
Yeah.
Welcome here. Thank you for joining. So I just want to take a little moment to remind our viewers that if you have any questions for us, just pop them into the chat, or if you're watching the replay, you can put them in the comments section and we will get back to those later on. And you can also let us know what kind of systems of support you have looked into over the years when you've moved to a new city. We'd love to hear those too. And above all, we really want to hear where in the world you are watching from today. So thanks for that. So Paule, you have had such a varied career in so many different countries. You, until just a few weeks ago, you were playing with the Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra, where you had been on your first move to Norway, you were assistant concertmaster for 5 years there. Not only that, when you go back to Ottawa, you are playing with the National Arts Centre Orchestra as well as touring with them. You've been principal second violin for 13 strings. You've been guest concertmaster for Ottawa Symphony Orchestra. You've been full-time member of Tafelmusik and Les Violons du Roi and Musique Baroque in Winnipeg. And you've founded 2 great organizations like the Ottawa Baroque Consort and also the Lumiere Quartet. So after all of that, it seems like we have intersected in a lot of places so far.
Yeah, we try to make it work.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, can you tell us about the first time you met Bernadette?
Yes, of course. It was, you played for a number of my students. And I believe it was between 2004 till about 7. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds right.
So well, the first time it was not Bernadette. You were on your rented house on the 2nd floor.
Oh yeah, but she was there.
She was there. I thought you had an upright.
No, I never
No.
had to.
Oh yeah, because that's right. It was pathetic to get her up the stair. That's right.
It was a big story getting her into that 2nd floor apartment.
It must be the space. Then I remember her in your house.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and we moved to that house after living in Vienna, and I remember that you were there also we were working with your students together.
Yeah. So that's when I met Bernadette. Yep.
Oh, well, she's missed you. She's here shining bright for you today.
Beautiful color.
Brunette Bernadette. So David, you and I also met up in Ottawa. Well, actually we met for a brief period in Winnipeg when I was still attempting to be a violinist. But after that, you've been performing and teaching all over the world. You just recently left also Bergen Philharmonic Orchestra after re-winning the position of first concertmaster after a 20-year period of recess in between the two, which is really
recess
heard of. And you've been a leader of many orchestras, the Vancouver Symphony Orchestra, Manitoba Chamber Orchestra, Ottawa Symphony Orchestra. You've been guest concertmaster for the Hanover Radio Orchestra, Vancouver Symphony, the Canadian Opera Company, and among so many other things, you've toured China 14 times. And 2 of those times I was so fortunate to go with you. That was just a magnificent life-changing experience for me. I really learned so much from going with you. And so you've clearly lived and toured the whole world over. So what brought you to Norway? What brought you to Bergen that first time?
Yeah, I guess I'm comfortable with traveling a lot. I'm a military brat. I don't know if you knew that. I'm a military brat. So all my siblings, 4 siblings, they were born in different places. That's part of it. But actually, Camilla Wicks, our teacher, both for Paule and me, she has Norwegian background. She was a phenomenal player. She was a huge soloist in her 20s. And I came across her at the band center. And then I would go in the summers and study with her. I was freelancing at the time. And I'd come to the conclusion that the position for me was probably concertmaster. I felt very comfortable with that position. It also allowed me to do solo and chamber music and, in a community to be able to create things as a concertmaster of a community. So I was looking at that. I was down in Ann Arbor. I was living in Toronto, went down to Ann Arbor to have a lesson with Camilla. She was teaching there at the time, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And she was a bit frustrated. She said, David, it's sounding terrific. Are you going to be in Toronto playing beer commercials and cartoon music for the rest of your life? And I said, well, no, there's this opening as a concertmaster in Bergen. And she knew Bergen Orchestra. And she said, right, that's the thing for you. I'm going to get in touch with people. And if they don't have, they'd had quite a few auditions already. But then they contacted me, and then so the rest is history.
And
That's how we got there.
Camilla is 92 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Wow, happy birthday, Camilla.
Living in Florida. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic.
Fantastic person. Yeah.
And so, if I recall correctly, I think David sort of dragged you along with him. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah. He got the job a week before we got married in 1985.
Oh, wow.
5 days before.
So we had to do a 360. We were going to go to Banff in fall 85,
Right.
starting September. And when he got the job the week before, I kind of went, well, I guess I better go and see if we like Norway or not. So,
Wow. So you hadn't even really checked it out first. You just went out there after he had won the job, and wow, that's incredible. And as I recall, I think you were touring at the time when, like, right before you moved there. Or?
We were playing like I had played half a year with Tuffle Music, replacing Paul actually. But Paul had a Tuffle.
Yeah.
And so we both the Innsbruck.
was that Valerie?
I said you're interchangeable. No.
Nepotism. No, but so yeah, we were in Salzburg, right? No, Innsbruck.
Yeah.
It was the year before, or that year.
That year.
Yeah, and then we went up to Norway from there. Yeah.
Wow.
Train.
Some honeymoon.
Oh yeah.
On a Euro-rail pass.
That's right.
So what was that like for you, Paul? You were in a new city. You hadn't really seen it before. You're moving there. You guys are just kind of getting used to married life and learning how to support each other in that way. What were some of the challenges how did you approach the challenges of moving to a brand new country as a freelance musician?
Well, what happened is that I actually didn't move right away with David because I was doing the Banff Winter Cycle. Then I got a job as a substitute for a year, maternity leave in the Montreal Symphony. So David was concertmaster #1, so he had 25 weeks. So when he was off, he would be with me in Montreal. Mm-hmm. So basically, I took 3 years to move permanently to Bergen. So when I was there, I was a freelancer in the first violin section of the Bergen Philharmonic. And then there was the third chair, the assistant concertmaster, came open in 88. Okay. I applied for audition and got the position. So then I was 5 years. Okay. We were 5 years, always in Norway. Our son was born there. Our first son was born in Norway. So, but the adaptation was, I suppose, gradual, but very welcoming. You know, sometimes when you're the spouse of a leadership person could be delicate, but the situation was, they were very welcoming and respectful, and so.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that was my experience too. I felt very welcome, and if there was any place that has felt as similar as possible to Canada, it's been Norway for me. Just
great.
So much of the landscape is similar, but not just that. I found that the people as well are friendly in a similar way and welcoming in a similar way that I've experienced, at least as a prairie girl where I'm from. So so you have had this experience where you've both moved to this country, you have a kid, things are starting to shift around. I think in the timeline, then you moved to Ottawa. Is that correct?
It was Winnipeg pretty much right after.
Okay, right. So then it was off to Winnipeg.
8 years. 8 years in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Wow. So another long-term move. And then Ottawa. Right. And I think, were you always sort of still connected to Bergen during these periods?
I worked a lot with the Grieg Academy. So either as a conductor or teaching, or I worked with a pianist there, fair amount of collaborations, summer festivals, etc. Yeah, I had a lot to do with Norway. Every single year, in those 20 years we were back in Canada, every single year I was in Norway doing something, at least once a year.
Right. And then it was time to move again, and you decided, let's go for it. Let's do it a second time. So I found in my own experience, when we're moving for to be with an organization, there's a lot of great things about that you have this kind of accepting culture of you right away. You have a community that's built in, but you also have this kind of work culture that you have to assimilate to as well. And that's, of course, anywhere you go, and maybe amplified by being in a different country. So you kind of have to get a sense of the social order of a place, or I found, even how it's different how you speak to someone one-on-one as compared to in a group. And then, of course, the time traveled, or the time honored question of what's really up for grabs in the communal refrigerator in the lunchroom, right? So we always have to figure out all of these kind of little nuances when we start a new job. But you were ending up going back to a job that you had already. So I'm really curious about what was the difference between that first time that you went to Bergen and when you went the second time. Were there some notable changes between the two experiences that you had there, David?
Yes, but I should say that we didn't necessarily go back to Bergen. That wasn't first on the list. I wanted to go back into orchestral playing.
Okay.
And Bergen was kind of a safe place for me to audition because I'd been there as a guest concertmaster. They were using me again, and I knew they were looking for somebody. I was thinking primarily to go to Germany or to England, okay, or Scotland as a concertmaster. But then I thought, well, what the heck? I mean, I might as well audition in Bergen. It's a lot of friends. I hadn't done an orchestral audition for 20 years. So I needed to actually get one under my belt, one or two under my belt, and then, see how things went. But I won that one, so I didn't have to do any more auditions. That's the way it came about. I would say the difference, the orchestra had a lot of, in our time, they had an Italian conductor, a Russian conductor, my first time around, Norwegian conductor. After the second time I was there, they had about 10 years, 12 years of an American conductor who gave them lots of Gershwin and popular music, etc. And they became really much better at much more flexible, different styles, French styles, and then Haydn, and then Gershwin, and this and that. So I think that's one of the things. The other thing, they got a lot of experience touring. In Europe, orchestras tend to tour much more, playing in different halls. You have to be flexible. Sometimes you can hear the basses really well, and sometimes you can just see them, or can't see them, whatever. They had done some great halls the year before we came.
Yeah, and they did a lot of recordings. They
a lot of recordings.
They did 4.5 recording a year, and still when we were there, but they had a lot of recordings with
crazy.
This conductor, Andrew Litton was their chief conductor.
Yeah, weeks of recording. So that was it, and I would say also just the level of preparation for first rehearsal changed. It was a little bit of frustration for me in 1985 when I was first there, that people would go hiking in the mountains if it was nice weather and sort of show up to work unprepared. And there was no question of that the second time we came back. And people were, first rehearsal, conductors would comment to me and say, geez, I don't know what to say. We're ready to do a concert today on the first day of rehearsal. So that would change.
Yeah, that would
big change in culture in thinking, in the way of thinking about your job.
For the job, or also in the city, in the country itself?
Yeah, I think, Oslo was a little bit different. They had Marius Janssens for a long time, and he really drilled them with that mentality of being prepared for work. And I think then in my orchestra came a little bit later, but then it was also seconded by Ed Gardner, the conductor that we also played, that succeeded Andrew Litton. So
okay,
very much the culture now.
Yeah. And Paule, what would you say, like, in terms of the actual community sense? Because how big is Bergen? What size of a city is it?
About 350. It's the size of Victoria, actually.
Yeah, so it's pretty substantial. So how did you feel? Of course, both times you were playing with the orchestra, but as we've mentioned before, there were other things that you needed to be doing first time around parenting, of course. And how did the city feel differently to you that second time when you?
Oh, the second time, okay. Well, first of all, I came back to all my good friends that were still there. So, and their kids were, you know, same generation. We actually, the second time around, we had our son who was 16 when David won the job. So for 2 years, David was back and forth between Ottawa and Bergen concertmaster. So by the time he was 18, he was off to college anyway. So he would have been. So none of the kids came to Norway the second time around. So our friends had kids the same age as ours, and so when we were the first time around, everybody was so busy with their small children that we didn't socialize. You know, after work we were home picking up the kids from kindergarten. Second time around, we got to socialize with these friends because their kids were over teenaging and, you know, teenager age.
They didn't want the parents around.
Exactly. We got to cook for each other, invite each other for dinners, and even having a weekend away at hytta, the cabins with girlfriends. You know, 4 girls we took up on a train and go skiing or fishing. So the second time around was different just because of that. But did I answer the question?
It sounds to me like you kind of were able to capitalize on the friendships that you made the first time and kind of really make them more solid. So
the other thing, Valerie, that was really cool, the second time around, you know, the first time around, first of all, we didn't have any money, you know, just basically beyond student years. And we took, you know, a couple of Euro rails, and lived in the worst hotels. That's another story. Right. And the second time around, you know, we had money, we were established. So we really, oh my goodness, we had a bucket list and we went through it.
Yeah, it was fun.
I mean, for instance, we'd only been to Paris, and then we just went through the regions. We had Normandy, Provence, Bordeaux, the wine tasting, etc. Lyon. I mean, it was really fun. We've seen so much of Europe now. Also, Eastern Europe wasn't open to us the first time through. Right. So we went Prague, Budapest, Slovenia, Slovakia. A lot of traveling. It was really great fun that way.
Ah, that sounds really incredible. It must have been a bit hard to leave, but you've done it. You've packed your, what was it, 16 suitcases?
18.
Yeah, it was. Well, the last was only 6, but over this last year. Yeah.
Wow. And so now you've ended up back in Canada. Paule, you're from Quebec, but I guess, David, you're back kind of on familiar turf here in British Columbia.
I was born in Quebec, but yes, I grew up in Vancouver.
Yeah. And so now, what's coming up on the horizon for you? What does that look like?
You go.
With COVID, we're on the back burner. Everybody in the world is waiting for what's next for stage people, right? For concert halls, for theater, for sports events even, right? But I suppose there's a good early music scene here on the island. So I would like to rebranch with that, and to be continued. But people are also very welcoming. I happened before COVID, March. I was here for a month. I actually played in the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra the second week of February, with this wonderful cellist, Ariel Barnes. He was the soloist from Vancouver. He was solo cello of Vancouver for years. And then he lives in Germany now. Anyway, so he was the soloist. So I did that with jet lag, then came back and did this Baroque festival on the island in Victoria, and very welcoming people. It was just, so let's see what the future will bring, but I'd like to keep in shape. We also have a quartet with 2 longtime friends that we're going to do a few projects with them.
We have 2 quartets, actually.
Yes, one classical and then one with our friends from one player from the Lafayette Quartet and her husband
That's called the Salish Quartet.
Yes, so we have a concert on the 4th of October and on the 15th of November online.
Okay.
And I think we're still allowed. We have 50 people in the audience on the 4th of October. If we're
nice. So you'll be a bit of a mix between live and online together.
Yeah, but it's online on the 4th of October, live direct. So David, do you have more to add?
So the other quartet is on period instruments with two friends from Tafel Music, and we don't have a name yet. So if anybody wants to name our quartet, go ahead. Send it. It's so hard to come up with a name.
Yeah.
The Bernadette Quartet.
The Bernadette Quartet.
No, but she doesn't really fit in. But that's kind of like always. We always have a hard time fitting her in anyway, so it's just fine. So that's great. So I'm going to take a second here to look at the chat. We've got a few questions here. One is from Jocelyn Dueck, my sister. She's saying, question for David, when you were touring in China together, she's wondering if you made any faux pas during your time there, or if you were as diplomatic as you always are. And if you don't want to answer that question, she tosses you a softball. She says, name a food you tried.
Oh, we tried. Did we try Donkey's Last Meal?
Yes, tell us about Donkey's Last Meal.
You know, I had it again 2 years later, but I was smart enough not to eat it. I think was it Asperger you ate? By the way, Asperger is donkey burgers.
Donkey burgers.
They called them Aspergers.
Yeah.
Was that, or did you have the?
Yeah, we had those together right before a show. I'm not sure that was really wise to eat that right before going on stage. But the other thing, Donkey's Last Meal. I remember that pretty vividly. I was just about to put it in my mouth, and you said, "Oh, by the way, that's donkey intestine," and it looked like Jello. I thought it was Jello. And as I wasn't sure. Yeah, I could definitely enjoy the Donkey's Last Meal as I was.
Well, I got to know friends in China as I was touring there more and more, and they would sort of, I think it's a Chinese thing to do when they're with a foreigner, they sort of dare you to eat different things. So I had a half Korean friend, so we ate a lot of dog. I had one friend who, a pianist, who took me to his favorite restaurant, and he didn't take this meal. He liked pork belly, but he gave me the specialty of this restaurant. I was absolutely starving. We had just finished a rehearsal. I was so hungry. I could eat anything. and it was a bed of noodles with a mountain of worms. Worms, split in half. Yeah. But I was so hungry, I ate it.
Didn't you put a lot of?
I put a lot of hot spice.
Hot spice on it.
Sriracha solves any problem as far as I'm concerned. We've got a couple of other questions. I'm not sure we have time to get to them, but I want to say thank you to Hayden Kiefer for writing in. He's saying we might get to this later on in the comments section. He said, how do you stay connected with loved ones when you're working or when work or COVID separates you? So this is something we're all dealing with right now. A really excellent question. And then also a question from Yasmin, my friend in Belgium. She says, personally, I found moving back home the hardest move of all. She was friends with me in Kazakhstan. So this was, she said, moving back to Belgium felt even more difficult than, moving to Kazakhstan in the first place. So she's wondering too, how you guys have found, I guess, moving back. It's pretty early to tell, but moving back to Canada, has it been easy? Has it felt like moving home? Has it felt like leaving home? Can you answer that yet? Is it too soon?
Maybe a bit too soon, but it certainly felt like home, partly because we had been in this home, let's say from last June 19 till we spent some time here. It was our primary after Elmer.
But also this time is different for me, at least, because I'm retiring.
Yeah.
So we have spent 4 years kind of paving the way. So those two quartets we're playing in are friends that we've said, oh, someday let's play quartet. We ended up in the same part of the world, so we're playing quartets with them. So that's one thing. And also we were teaching at the University of Victoria, teaching at the Conservatory, Victoria Conservatory. We haven't just, suddenly plunked ourselves down here.
Yeah.
We took a good 3-4 years of also just looking at real estate and whatnot. So this is not this is a move that has been thought out for a long time.
Yeah, because his mother unfortunately passed away in 2018, but we would come and visit her. David's sister lives here, so it was mapped out in a way.
No. So probably so far it's the easiest move that way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I hope it stays. That's
Yeah.
excellent. So one final.
We gave our kids all their stuff, so we have to.
Well,
We're doing a
now
lot of shopping.
you have no choice now.
Yeah.
This has to be this way. So the last question for me is, if you could perform absolutely anywhere in the world, where would that be?
Is this the mystery
Anywhere.
question?
It's your trick question or mystery question.
Oh, that's difficult. As chamber musicians, as soloists,
However you want. You
it
could
would
do-
have to be chamber music. Forget about solo. You know what?
What?
An outdoor concert somewhere in the Provence area in France. Oh, I would like that. We
yeah.
saw a little village. A colleague of ours in Bergen has this summer place, so he goes in the summer, or more than that. But what was it called again? Mont Flagrant or something, and it's a court.
Oh yeah.
And he does some events himself. He conducts and whatnot. So I could see myself doing something there. That would be kind of fun. Anyway, something.
That sounds manageable. We could make that happen, right?
My answer is quite different. I always had so much fun performing in the community you're in. And part of that is that people don't know you as a fiddle player. You know, you were just helped repairing their lawnmower or something like this. They don't necessarily know you for what you do. Even my uncle came home.
Yeah.
And you got some really fun, interesting feedback, not so much about your performance, but just about, wow, that's a different dimension. I didn't know you as a musician, or they didn't, I mean, of course, they knew what we did, but they hadn't seen us doing what we do. I think that's a thing. You know, did you have that impression? I think you and I talked about it when you're in China, where the food, as we mentioned, it's completely different. You can't
so good. We have to point out that it's so delicious and so fresh.
Yeah. But you can't have a profound conversation with anybody. I mean, if you speak a bit of Mandarin, then you know it's on a very, very superfluous level. Yeah. And then I found when at the end of the day, 7 o'clock, when I finally got on stage, wow, I can actually communicate something meaningful to another human being. I can do what I do. First of all, I always felt that so interesting. I mean, I remember playing concerts when I was young in my own cities and I was being so nervous, and doing all those concerts in China, especially when we were on tour, like 10, 12 concerts without a day off almost, where that was the time I felt best in the whole day. I felt most relaxed. I'm doing what I do. That was a really great feeling. So I gave 2 answers to one question.
Yeah, you did.
I love it. You could answer 12, and now they'd all be just, it's fascinating. I think we learn a lot about hearing people's ideal circumstances. So speaking of performing, you guys have this performance this clip that you've sent in for us to listen to today. So I'm wondering if you can introduce that for us.
Do you want to go?
Well, you can introduce a composer because you have connection, but please, it's a bad sound. We apologize. It was the COVID recording on our iPad, but so it's a duo, 2 duos, short duos, from a Norwegian Bergen composer, but David should introduce the composer.
Yeah, Harald Stewart was kind of the dean of composers. He was a feisty old guy. He was quite a personality. He was always, for instance, in the newspapers. I started when I was after a couple of years in Norway. I was reading the newspapers, and they'd always have the one-liner from Harold Stewart. He had always funny things to say about whatever topic, you name it. He was a real character, much loved in the city of Bergen. I actually became rather close to his son, who took the name, another composer, Kjetil Voslef, which is to this day one of my favorite composers in Norway. And also Kjetil's son, my age, Trond Severud, he took his grandfather's name. Is this getting confusing?
I'm taking notes. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm making my own family tree as we go
I
along.
first played these duos, Severud duos, with Trond, the grandson. And they're very much like the Bartók duos. Very simple music. You should play it almost in first position.
Yeah, it's folk.
Yeah.
Based on folk.
Yeah. And it's very, very simple things like the Bartók duos. Unfortunately, the Bartók duos, they have names like Pajama Game and this or that, but he didn't name that it's an Andante Sostenuto or something, you know. But you can make your own names up as you listen to it. I think we're playing two of the movements. Yeah. So enjoy. I hope you enjoy those pieces.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That was really enjoyable to hear the folk music tunes going through there and the exciting rhythms, and really quite tonal considering that it's something that's not written so long ago. So, and I think that's the first time I've had the privilege of hearing just the two of you playing together. So that was a real treat as well. So thank you so much. What a great honor it's been having you guys here together with Bernadette today on the show. It's been such a treat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Bienvenue.
Merci beaucoup.
Pleasure. Thanks, Valerie.
Thank you. And thanks also to Ivan Plazačić, our digital advisor, who we are so fortunate to have him here supporting us for each episode. We couldn't do it without him. Bernadette and I also acknowledge the support of the Canada Council for the Arts. And of course, I have to acknowledge the support of Bernadette herself. What a wonderful co-host. So that brings us to the end of episode 4. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can head over to my Facebook page where I've just performed a live recording of Homesickness by Edvard Grieg, and you can check it out there. We've got one more final show for Well-Tempered Bernadette. It's happening next Saturday. It's going to be the episode where we present the town I'm currently in, Geneva. And that will be together with Thorvald Jorgensen, who is going to come and demonstrate his theremin for us. Well, he'll be coming on the internet waves with us from the Netherlands, and he's also going to perform live for us as well. So it's really going to be a very interesting episode. This instrument is only 100 years old. It's pretty brand new, and it's something you're going to want to check out. That interview will be right here in the same place on my YouTube channel. If you're enjoying these episodes, you can subscribe and you'll be notified of upcoming episodes, but also you can just come back here to check out previous episodes or watch them again if you enjoyed them. Those were on Vienna, Nur Sultan, and Ottawa. And otherwise, there's always more information and live performances featuring Bernadette on my website at valeriedueck.com. So thank you so much to you, the viewers, for joining us from all around the world today. It's been a really special time together. And until next time, stay tuned. Stay well-tempered. See you soon.